How can my reasonable friend be a Christian? Now, I'm presuming to some degree you're sitting in the room because you've got a mate who's invited you along. And I presume you're here because you know it's a Christian event. You do now, and you're stuck really, aren't you? And we're all British, so we're too polite to get up and leave at this point. But I presume you're here because of that, and you know about it a little bit. And I presume you're here because maybe there's something in your friend, and you go, yeah, fair play, they are quite reasonable to a degree. They're fairly normal people. Yet they call themselves Christians. Fairly, there's a few shakes of the head, I realise. I was explaining earlier on in the lunch bar and last night a little bit about my life and my story. I've not been a Christian all my life. There's been two kind of significant times where I've not been a Christian. One of them would have been growing up from an early age, a lot like Alex. I did go to church, but it doesn't make you a Christian at all. So from the age of 0 all the way up to about 13, I didn't know anything myself personally about following Jesus. And there was also a time between about 16 and 19 that I wouldn't have called myself a Christian. I actively kind of turned my back on it all, and I didn't want to follow Jesus then. But there were two fellas who stuck out to me like a sore thumb. Let me tell you about them just quickly. The first guy was actually my year 6 primary school teacher, Mr. Thomas. Now, don't think kind of grey hair, shirt and tie, pencil case, lunchbox under the drawer. No, he was really normal. He was very, very normal. He was young. Yeah, he wore a shirt and tie sometimes, but he also wore sports kit. And if you're a sportsman at all in the room, or woman in the room, when your teacher turns up in sports gear, you're thinking, this is good, this is good. And he was so normal. Because we had loads of fun together in our lessons as a class. We played sport, he was really good at it, it was competitive. And yet he turned round and he called himself a follower of Jesus. And these are the days where in school, I guess a teacher could probably say that without having to maybe walk on eggshells at some degree. See, he was different to anyone else I had seen, maybe who would call themselves a Christian. And he was sporty. And he was normal. And he was the favourite teacher in the school, actually. Everyone wanted Mr. T for year 6. We're only little, so everyone wanted Mr. T. Normal favourite teacher of the school, yet called himself a Christian. How the heck does that work? And the second guy was when I was 19. A guy I got to know a little bit as I grew up at sports camps, but when I was 19 there was a guy called John Reeves, who I got to know a little bit. Now Reevesy is this pint size of a man from the valleys in Wales. He is like this ball of energy. He's great fun. And he's a sportsman as well. In fact, he's so sporty. I was watching him play five-a-side once, and he got so angry and so passionate about it, I nearly saw him punch someone in the face. And I thought, wait a second, this guy's a Christian. He's not allowed to do that. He's meant to be a wet rag. He's no chance he's allowed to get passionate about his sport. Yet he was. He was really sporty. He was really normal. Yet he called himself a Christian. And I thought, wait a second. How does that work? I don't know what you think about the Christian faith. You're here maybe because, of course, you know someone in the room who calls themselves a Christian. But I wonder if that's been something in your mind a little bit. You go, wait a second, how can this person be a Christian yet be quite reasonably normal at the same time? See, some people find it quite hard to grasp. If you're a Christian in the room, you can't relate to it, really, because you might have just grown up not knowing any other way. But if you're not a Christian in the room, maybe you can relate to my story a little bit, and you're going, that just doesn't quite match up. I don't see how the two things go together. Yet at the same time, isn't there a part of you in your head that goes, it's slightly intriguing, though, this Christian lark. And at the same time, it's a little bit scary. Because if your reasonably normal friend, who's a lot like you, who I presume you're normal as well, I don't know you, but I presume you are, if you're normal and they're normal and they become a Christian, doesn't that mean that there's potential that you too could become a Christian? So it's a little bit scary when you start putting all of this together. See, so often, I think one of the biggest barriers people have towards the Christian faith is they just think Christians are weird. They just think they're just a little bit wacky. They're the mad friend that maybe you pointed the finger at on the table. People often think that Christianity is weird. But if you're here tonight, I'm presuming to some degree you stepped over that barrier already. Unless, of course, you still call your friend who's weird a weirdo. I want to say that's probably not because they're a Christian. But I'll let you decide on that one, okay? See, could it be that the Christian faith is so close to the reality of just human life that there could be some truth in it? I wonder. See, let's pick up with our story, if we can, of these two guys. There's a guy called John. He's a normal bloke. But he was around at the time of Jesus. He watched what Jesus did. He heard what Jesus said. He saw some of the things he did, and he just wrote it all down as accurately as he possibly could. And he's saying here that this is a point now where Jesus has kind of arrived on the scene, and he gets into a conversation with these two fellas, Philip and Nathaniel. And they were talking about an encounter that Philip has with Jesus. Jesus has kind of been showed himself, and he's forming himself a little bit of a team of men. We know them more now as the disciples. But that's the setting in which we're kind of stepping into at this point. Let me read those first few verses again. The next day, Jesus decided to leave for Galilee. Finding Philip, he said to him, "Follow me." Philip, like Andrew and Peter, they followed him from the town of Bethsaida. Let me start again. Follow me. Philip, like Andrew and Peter, was from the town of Bethsaida. Philip found Nathanael and told him, "We have found the one Moses wrote about in the law, and about whom the prophets also wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." Now it's worth us knowing a little bit about these two guys then, Philip and Nathaniel. We presume they're mates to some degree, because Philip went and found Nathaniel. We know that they're Jews, because of the time that this was written and some of the stuff that's quoted in there. And we know to some degree that they might have grown up with an understanding of it. They would have gone to Sunday school, but for them back then it was on a Saturday. But there was one big thing that we need to know about Philip and Nathaniel. They would have known their Bibles. For them at the time all they had was the Old Testament, because the new one is at this very present time. And they knew their Bibles. And they knew that in the Old Testament, that the people of Israel, which includes them, the Jews, they'd been waiting for 600 years, yearning after a king to arrive on the scene who could restore for them a place and a land where they could live with freedom and joy. In a place where they are not then ruled over by the Roman Empire that are currently the kind of top dogs at the time. And they're yearning for this person to turn up. 600 years they've been waiting for him. That's the setting here. So go back now into the conversation that happens between them. And it goes a little bit like this. So, Philip goes to find Nathaniel. He goes, "All right, Nat, how you doing?" "Hey, decent, Phil. Yeah, not too bad, thanks. How are you?" He goes, "Yeah, not too bad, thanks for Nat, thanks for asking. But you'll never guess who I just met." "Oh, what's that?" He goes, "Well, I met the king, the guy we've been waiting for 600 years. And then he goes, "Wait a second, what? Nazareth?" There's no reason. Why does Nathaniel react this way? Because Philip turned around to him and said, "The guy we've been waiting for 600 years has just arrived on the scene, by the way. And we've been waiting for him to arrive, and I've just seen him in person." Look at his reaction there. Nazareth. Can anything good come from Nazareth, he says. Now Nazareth is this tiny little town. And it's a little bit harsh of him really. But it's as if I turned around to you guys here and said the next Prime Minister is going to come from Bath Spa University. Yes, so you laugh, don't you? Bath Spa University, Prime Minister, no chance. That's exactly what Nathaniel's doing in this moment. He's turning around to him and saying, "No way." Now, it's a hot country. Maybe Philip's been walking around all day and he's not had any water. So Nathaniel's maybe got a bit of grounds to think, oh, he's not doing too well. He's a bit of a space cadet. He's a little bit tired. And maybe he goes, oh, yeah, maybe he's not feeling too well. He's a little bit stressed. But the moment he turns around to him and goes, "Nazareth," he's thinking, no, my mate's gone mad. He's absolutely off his rocker. No chance could this king, who we've been waiting for, have turned up at this very moment in time. Yet he carries on talking to him, doesn't he? What keeps Nathaniel talking to Philip? Because they're mates. He knows him. He knows that up until this moment, he's a pretty normal bloke. They've had a good laugh together. They've grown up together. They've seen things together. He's his mate, which keeps him talking. See, I wonder if it's a bit like that for you. See your Christian mate who you're in a room. Yeah, they're a little bit different to you. But you get on, don't you? And you like them. Well, at least I presume you do. And if you don't, you need to be honest with them. But you like them. And you get on. And there's something different about them. And inside of you, maybe, just maybe, there's something going inside of you going, I know this could be a little bit weird, but it's not weird. He's not weird. She's not weird. But maybe you go, yeah, but it's just not relevant to me. No, this couldn't have any relevance to me. Well, what happens here with Nathaniel and Philip? Look how Philip reacts. I love this. Cool as a cucumber, isn't he? Come and see. Come on. Come and meet him. So come on, let's go. Let's carry on with him, shall we? Flick over to the next slide. What does he say? Hey, Nathaniel, come with me. We can go and meet him for ourselves. We can go and meet this king who's been promised for 600 years' time. From 600 years ago. Look what he says. When Jesus saw Nathanael approaching, he said of him, "Here truly is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." "How do you know me?" Nathanael asked. And Jesus answered, "I saw you while you were still under the fig tree before Philip called you." See, some of the stuff that Jesus says to Nathanael in this moment here is a little bit meaningless to us, maybe at the moment. But there's two big things we need to just remember and know as we kind of try and understand a little bit about what Jesus is saying here. Firstly, Jesus is quoting to Nathanael something from the Old Testament. And as I said before, they know their Old Testaments like the back of their hands. He turns to him and he goes, "Here is a true Israelite in whom there is no deceit." There's nothing false about him. This is actually a quote taken from a kind of a song book that Nathanael would have sung as he was in church and he would have read as he grew up. And the song is written by a guy who's just yearning to have a right relationship with God. He writes it because he just desires that God would forgive him of some of the shortfallings he's had in his life. And God would not hold any of the wrongs against him. See, in fact, what happens here is that when Jesus quotes this kind of ancient hymn to Nathanael growing up, what Jesus is doing, he's breaking right through into Nathanael's deepest hopes and his dreams. And he shocks him. Because all of a sudden, running through Nathanael's head, he's starting to think, how on earth can this guy who I've never met before quote to me a song that I know like the back of my hand, which is bang on how I'm really feeling right now. It summarises everything I hope for and I long for. And yet this guy now has just hit the nail on the head. A few years ago I was helping at a youth camp. And it was really good fun. We, as leaders, got to kind of do loads of different things with the young people. Maybe you've done summer camps like that. And we always had on the last night this big campfire. And I had the privilege of being in charge of the campfire. For any men in the room, alpha males, it's like, sending a kid into a toy shop being told you're allowed to look after the fire. Because it's like pyromaniacs, we love it. So we had all of it there kind of set up. We got told where all the wood was. We got told where the young people had to stay. We got told what happens in an emergency. And we got given a fire extinguisher for that very purpose. What happens in an emergency. And we had a good time together. It was a good laugh. All the young people came out with their marshmallows and they're in there and hot drinks and all of that. And it was good fun. And then we finished the night and they all walk into their rooms. And myself and a couple of others were tasked with putting out the fire and just making sure it finishes fine. And I've never used a fire extinguisher before. And all of a sudden this kind of wonder came in my head. What's it like to use a fire extinguisher? I'd held one before, I'd moved one, I'd pretended to use one, but I'd never done it. So I thought, go on, let's have a crack. So with that, I pull the pin out, and I whack open this fire extinguisher, and I'm spraying it all over the campfire. And I turn around as I spray it, and the manager of the conference centre walks right in front of us. And I just go, hello? I didn't know that when you use a fire extinguisher, you can't use it again. I also didn't know at that point that the fire extinguisher costs quite a lot of money to replace. And eventually I found out that we got billed for an awful lot of money. I don't think we've ever gone back to that conference centre to do any of our camps again. I was gutted. Absolutely gutted. What on earth was I doing? So I wonder if you've ever had those funny stories of times where you kind of regret a little bit some of the decisions you make in those moments. See, this is what's happening here for Nathaniel in his life. And I wonder if you've had that reality. I wonder if you're willing to admit, have you ever done those things where you kind of go, what was I doing? But I wonder if you've ever had it where it moves a little bit more seriously for yourself. Ever done stuff you just wish you'd never done? I've said this in both my talks already. Honestly, if you got to know me a little bit, I'd be shocked. I would be embarrassed at some of the stuff that I've done in my life. Haven't you done stuff you just wish you'd never done? Can you imagine for a moment I just put your life on the screen here and we played it for the whole room to see? You'd be out the door in a flash, wouldn't you? We've had these moments, haven't we? And maybe you're like Nathaniel here, and lingering in your mind a little bit is that feeling of kind of guilt, maybe, or the weight of the past a little bit there, or that pain maybe of hurting someone around you or being hurt yourself. I wonder, this is exactly how Nathaniel feels in this moment, and Jesus knows it, and Jesus has seen it, which is why it prompts his response. Do you see it? How do you know me? Nathaniel asks. How do you know me? Truly, this is an Israelite. He's desiring after it. He wants to be put right with God. And he says it to him and he goes, how on earth do you know me? And look what Jesus says back. I saw you while you were still under the fig tree before Philip called you. Now remember, there was two things I said that we need to know about Nathaniel. One was that point I just made. That he desired to be in a right relationship with God, and God knew that. He knew his heart. Jesus knew his heart. Here's the second thing. Nathaniel maybe will have been sheltering from the sun underneath the fig tree, but there's a lot more significance in it. Again, it's related to the Old Testament, the stuff that Nathaniel knew. And he would have grown up with it. And Jesus is quoting to him a section of this Old Testament that again just knits completely where Nathaniel's heart is at the moment. See, the Jews believed that a day would come where this promised king would come and restore the entire land. The Jews have this picture of an understanding that when this king comes, the man of the house, he will sit under the fig tree in the kind of noonday sun. And according to the prophet who predicts this and foretells it, it would be a privilege for him. Because on that day, no longer is he looking over the farmland which he's renting off someone or it's owned or dictated by someone else. No, on that day, it says, you'll look over your farmland. And you'll sit under that fig tree and you'll have peace and you'll have comfort and you'll know that that's your land. This was the dream for the Jews. This was the dream for Nathaniel. He just longed for it to happen. Nathaniel's an idealist, really. A heart. He longs for a day. He longs for things to be different. He has dreams. He has hopes. He wants a better place. I wonder if you've ever had those kind of feelings. Either provoked by a circumstance, or you've just let your mind wander for a moment. And you think, could life be different to what I'm experiencing? Back in December, my wife and I were invited to a wedding in Cape Town in South Africa. So we made a holiday out of it. We did 2 weeks. And if any of you have been, it is an unbelievable place. If you've not been, get there. It's brilliant. You'll have a great time. But one, obviously, the big attractions in Cape Town is Table Mountain. And now, I like to think my wife and I are pretty fit. We knew about the cable car, but I thought, no chance. We are walking this beast. So we walked around to the kind of botanical garden area where you can start it, and we picked up one of the maps, and there was all these different routes on it, and I thought, well, we'll just go on that one. And we cracked on. And you know what it's like when you climb a hill, don't you? First half an hour, all smiles, loving it, walking along, just strutting your stuff, thinking we're going to be at the top before we know it. But then 40 minutes passed, and suddenly the smiles left our faces a little bit. And we're trudging, and we're trudging, and we're trudging. And then we get to this point, alright, climbing Table Mountain, where no longer can you walk it. You've actually got to physically climb it. They've built ladders on Table Mountain where you start to climb up the ladders. And I filmed it on our camera here, and you're going up Table Mountain. All of a sudden, what this joyous experience was like suddenly started to turn into a little bit of a long ordeal. And you know what it's like? Have you ever had it when you're walking, maybe it's raining, and you're tired and you're exhausted? You start to long for things in your mind, don't you? Oh, I can't wait for a bath. I can't wait for a bath. Oh, just to take my trainers off and put them in a nice cold bucket of water. Or chocolate. Can't wait to get home and eat that bite. You start to do it, don't you? When you start to feel a little bit worn out. That's exactly what happened. Little did I know, I didn't really check the map out very well. I picked the longest route. It took us 4.5 hours until we got to the top of Table Mountain. But it was worth it, because we got to the top of Table Mountain and it was absolutely brilliant. You can see over the whole of Cape Town, the city, and you can just see vast oceans as far as the eye can see. And it's funny in those moments, isn't it, that as you look out there, suddenly you start thinking about big things in life. And we ended up having one of those chats where you think about the next 5, 10, 20 years. What do you want to do in life? Your big dreams and your hopes. Have you ever had one of those moments? I wonder if you have. I wonder if you naturally think that way. Well, this is exactly the situation here with Nathaniel. He's dreaming. What could life be like? And what about you? What are your dreams? What are your hopes? What are your desires? If you could leave a legacy on the earth, what would it be? If you could change one thing about the world right now, what would that thing be? What would you love to see happen? See, this is what Nathaniel was doing, and Jesus knew it. Here's the remarkable thing about the Christian faith. When you encounter Jesus, you're not encountering some distant, abstract, kind of impersonal being that floats around at the top of the universe who has no relevance to your life or no understanding of you at all. No, it's so much different to that. It is so different. You meet someone who knows you. You meet someone who knows your inner feelings. You meet someone who knows your motivations. You meet someone who knows your dreams, your hopes, your fears to some degree. See, here Jesus empathizes with a man who dreams for a better world. For himself, for his children, and for their children. He dreams of a place where there will be justice and fairness. He dreams of a place where there'll be liberation and hope, and he won't have to live under the oppression of the Roman kind of dictatorship. Don't you sometimes think that for our land as well? Wouldn't you love a place of complete justice? So I wonder, have you really ever thought, does God care for you? He understands you. He understands you maybe better than anyone else in the room here this evening. I wonder, have you ever ventured in your mind along this road? See, for Nathaniel here, Christianity wasn't weird because his mate Phil was a normal bloke. And all of a sudden, no longer is it irrelevant to him. This guy Jesus knew him, and he knew how he felt. And that's what provokes his next reaction. Look at it. Flick it on for us. Then Nathanael declared, Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. Wait a second, what a contrast, isn't it? A couple of minutes ago, this guy Nathanael slated him because he's from Nazareth, Bath Spa, remember? Now, what's he doing? He's turning around and going, no, you're the guy. You're the guy we've been waiting for 600 years. Nathanael's absolutely buzzing, isn't he? He's loving it. All of a sudden, things have changed in Nathanael's thinking. And at first reading, we could read that and go, oh, Nathanael's in. He's become a Christian. Sorted. It's not weird, it's not irrelevant, brilliant. Crack on, Nathaniel. Well done, you've met him. All sorted. But Jesus doesn't stop there, does he? He moves the conversation on a little bit. Because Jesus knows this thing, that feelings, to some degree, it's not all about feelings. He knows that, yes, we can feel a certain way and sometimes we can be in an emotional kind of state, but it doesn't actually do an awful lot. It might take your mind away from something for a while, but it might thrill your heart for a while, but does it actually achieve something? Now come with me, because you all have experienced this moment. You know what it's like when you've got an end of term assignment, don't you? The roller coaster of a ride, that is. Some of you might be in the thick of it right now. You start off, don't you? You've got your topic. You know which way you want to go. And you're thinking, right, let's have it. I'm going to smash this essay. And then you kind of sit down. You get everything around you nice and perfect, don't you? You get your computer there. You got your kind of coffee brewing there nicely. Jaffa cakes, Red Bull in the can in the fridge, just waiting for the energy boost you need it. And you start your essay and you think, we're in here. I'm going to get this sorted. You've had the feeling, yeah? Some of you are looking at me with blank faces. And maybe you don't do essays, but I trust you do, some of you anyway. So you start your essays, don't you? And you're thinking we're sorted, but about 30 minutes go past. And all of a sudden, where you thought you knew exactly what you were writing about, you suddenly realise you don't really have a clue. So you think, I'm just going to go and disturb one of my mates across the library who's doing the same assignment as me. I'm just going to annoy him for a little bit. So you kind of just scrap your essay off and you walk on over to them and you have a little bit of a laugh together. You watch a bit of YouTube, don't you, in the library? You do it, don't you? You just watch YouTube. You just watch as many things as you can. You do anything to take your mind off your assignment. And for that moment, you don't think about it at all. You're feeling pretty happy. Yet, unfortunately, that doesn't write the essay for you, does it? So you return back to the computer and then you crack on. So you go at it again another hour or so. And then you start to really struggle with it. And then I don't really know what I'm writing about here. And the frustrations come on and like the heavy breathing and the absolutely guts. You think, right, I've just got to take a break here. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to beast it in the gym, get a good sweat on, take my mind off it. So you go for it. You go to the gym, you put a good few kind of hours, you try and make it as long as you possibly can in the gym. And you do anything to take your mind off. And you're feeling quite healthy. You're feeling quite good about yourself. The same issues there. That essay hasn't finished. The feeling hasn't written the essay for you. So then you go back to it and you think, right, I've just got to finish it. So you're writing, and you're writing, well, you're trying to write, and you're writing and writing. And then your mates walk past at about 10:30 going, hey, do you fancy going on a night out? And everything inside of you doesn't want to, everything inside of you knows you've got to do the essay, isn't it? You think, I've got to write this essay. Part of you goes, I'd love to go out. I'd love to go out. So you do. You scrap the essay and you go straight out and you have a great night. You have a few drinks, you get your best dance moves on the dance floor, you're having a great time. You don't think about the essay for a moment. Yet still, the essay needs to be written. You know, in reality, unless you sit down and you write the assignment and unless you hand it in and you pass it, you're not going to get into next year. See, it's a bit like this now with Jesus and Nathaniel. He's buzzing. He's feeling great because this guy Jesus knows him better than anyone else. And he's thinking to himself, could this guy know me? Yet Jesus wants to make sure Nathaniel knows one thing. Is it true? Is this Jesus fella the one who's come to fulfill the 600 years of waiting? Is he really, really true? And this is what Jesus is getting at here in this final quote. Again, he draws upon Old Testament stuff that Nathaniel would have known. But this is essentially what Jesus is saying. He turns around to Nathaniel and he says, listen, a day's going to come, Nathaniel, where you are going to see God and man come back together in the most perfect relationship you will ever witness. See, if you read on the rest of the book of John, can I encourage you to do that, by the way? Don't take it as fact from me. Check it out for yourself. John's Gospel, you can pick it up from somewhere, I'm sure you can, and the guys of the sea would love to give you one. If you read on to it, this is what you eventually discover. That this guy Jesus, he really did do remarkable things. He taught in a way that no one else had heard before. He did things that no one else had seen before. Yet his life culminated with him dying on a cross, a dirty Roman filthy cross at about 33, 34 years of age. See, at the heart of the Christian faith is this incredible news that God, despite knowing my failings, despite knowing all the times I've got it wrong and all the rubbish in my life, and despite knowing all of that about you, instead of giving me a right and fair punishment, because he's got to deal with it, isn't he? Instead of giving me that, guess what he does? He puts it all on Jesus. At the heart of the Christian faith, Jesus Christ dies on a cross in order to take the punishment for my sin, the wrong stuff I do, so that I can be completely forgiven. So that you and I can approach God and have a completely white slate and not a single mark against our names. This is what Jesus is talking about here. He wants us to know that not only does he know our hopes and our dreams, not only does he know a little bit about our hearts, he wants us to know that we still need the greatest need of all dealt with. And he promises Nathanael that this day is going to come. You're going to see it, Nathanael. You're going to see me down a cross. You're going to see heaven rip open. You're going to see God there. You're going to see man there. And I'm going to stand in the middle of it and I'm going to bring you two together. This is the heart of the Christian faith. This is what he's saying here. And he says it's in this act that you really can know it's true. It's in this act you can know who I am is really, really God. See, the Bible goes on to explain that Jesus died on a cross. They shoved a spear right in his side to make sure he was definitely dead. They buried him in a tomb. But then 3 days later, he rose back to life. He appeared to John, the guy who wrote this. He appeared to Nathanael. You can read it. He appeared to the disciples, many of which who went on and died for what they believed in. And he appeared to over 500 people. And through his death and his resurrection, he really proved that the whole thing is true. That his death on the cross is enough. That everything he said is true. That everything the Bible says is true. See, for Nathanael it wasn't weird because of Philip. It wasn't irrelevant. And eventually he saw in his own eyes that it is actually true as well. I wonder for you. Hey? What do you think? Maybe the weirdness is still there. Chat to your Christian mate. Find out if it's there because they're weird or whether Christianity is weird. Hang out with them a little bit more. I reckon they won't be that weird after a while. Is it irrelevant? Check it out. Have a read. Is it true? And maybe you sit here and you go, all three I actually do think are true. Well, not the first one or the second. I don't think it's weird. I don't think it's irrelevant. But I really do believe it's true. Here's my challenge to you. Why don't you just put your trust in it? Why don't you trust your life with Jesus and receive in him complete forgiveness for everything in life and a brand new life with him that starts today and continues forever. I want to give people an opportunity to make that response if they want to. If you don't want to, no problem at all. Absolutely no chance. No chance, no. You just switch off, that's fine. I'm going to pray a prayer. It's simple really. It's just a prayer of admitting we have got it wrong, believing in what Jesus has done and committing your life to him. If you don't want to pray it, no problem, just switch off. If I could ask you just to kind of close your eyes and bow your heads in case someone does want to do it and we don't want to isolate them in the room. But let me pray. Heavenly Father, thank you that you know us. Thank you that you know our deepest thoughts and dreams. Thank you that you know our lives and all that we have done. I'm sorry that I have so often made some crazy, stupid decisions. I'm sorry that I've lived my life often rejecting you or living as if you don't exist. Thank you for sending Jesus, your one and only Son, to die on a cross so that I could be forgiven and so I could come to know you for myself. I commit my life to you from this day forward. Amen.